Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Sand between my toes, the LA Memorial Coliseum, and the Los Angeles Rams for the Ravens on Monday night. But, I'm turning my attention to Marty Conway, not about the purple Kool-Aid being served here in Baltimore, as you're very familiar with Marty, but a lot of things going on, man. It has been an active couple of weeks, whether it's the 17-game schedule, whether it's the Ravens going out to LA where the Chargers may or may not be in the future, and even the Houston Astros and banging on trash cans in your old industry to win world championships. It has not been for the faint of heart. It's only been 2 weeks since you and I were talking about a Nationals parade, right?
Yeah, that's right. And things move on quickly now. We turn the page pretty quickly from the end of baseball to right into a bunch of baseball stories. But then, obviously, the biggest story in town is what's going on with the Ravens and Lamar. So there's lots of upside there, lots of opportunity. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what transpires not only on the field but off the field in terms of opportunities. This may be one of the most unique things to hit Baltimore sports in a couple decades.
Well, okay, so peel that back a little bit. That's a That's a lot, right? So I'll just give you a little story for me. I was in Catonsville State Fair. I did a Baltimore Positive with Don Moeller, with Sonia Santelises, and with Adrian Jones, Speaker of the House. So I made a left turn out of State Fair and right where Bill's Music is, and I looked, and I saw literally the first Lamar Jackson poster I have ever seen. Yeah. It was an old school 3-foot poster. It didn't say, Bud Light or Miller Lite. It wasn't. It was just like a poster like we would have had when we were kids or whatever, like a Dr. J poster. And I saw it, and I'm like, that's the first thing, and I literally saw it earlier today, that I've seen his image on a sheet of paper somewhere that wasn't pirated by my buddy Tony making the Thriller Michael Jackson T-shirts in his basement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. I think you're really just on the precipice of this, and he's been playing now for basically, 16, 17, 18 games, whatever that goes back to the end of last year in the playoffs. And so you're essentially at the end of the first season of having him be the regular quarterback. And so as a result, I think that's what you're seeing, people trying to figure out what could we do here with him? What is he comfortable doing? Where is his fit? What organizations might fit with him? What does he want to do? He may be somebody that chooses to be very selective about what he does early on in the local market. But
we had Joe Flacco doing McDonald's commercials all over Pepsi billboards. I mean, Joe had a minute of it, but he just didn't win a second, third, fourth one, right? I mean, but he got his 1 year thing where he was the Super Bowl MVP, right?
Yeah. So I think what the game changer here is Lamar being one of the few. You can count them on half of one hand in the Baltimore market that have been in his situation, particularly at a skill position in the NFL. You can have great defenders. I think the legacy of Baltimore in terms of Ravens personalities, Joe Flacco certainly was present, but the legendary Ravens personalities were on the defensive side of the ball. So to have somebody who's in the skill position, not just any skill position, and to have sort of where he's at in this excitement, this is what you're capturing. This is what Philadelphia went through with Carson Wentz. This is what some other markets go through when somebody emerges into that opportunity. And corporate Baltimore, corporate Maryland starts to think about, what could we do with him? I'm sure that there are marketing people who are connected in sponsorship to the Ravens, and others are saying, okay, what could we do with him? Give me some ideas. And at some point, those ideas will turn into deals. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he captures the market, because in addition to just being in that skill position, he has that other advantage, which is you can just use his first name. He's to the point where
right, yeah.
When somebody says Lamar, we know who we're talking about, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan had a name like Michael that everybody shared, right? And he was just Michael or Elvis or, LeBron. There are no other LeBrons, right?
That's right. And so I think that's what's going to bring in. You're seeing it. I know you're talking to people from outer markets who are now sticking around in Baltimore, wanting more opportunity to see, more perspective to see what's going on here. But that's the thing. There are very few people that can transcend. Look, it's the AFC. It's the Baltimore market. That's not the Packers and the Cowboys and the Saints. And Fox is rarely going to get the Ravens, and that's the biggest of the TV deals in terms of reach. So this gives CBS and others the opportunity, and I think that you'll see they'll start to schedule around him, and they'll start to do some things around it, and knock on wood that he stays healthy, and that this situation suits him. It's a potential game changer. Look, it came at the perfect time for the Ravens. You and I talked about this over the last year or two, that some of the struggles that they were having in getting people to get into tickets early, retain their tickets for the longer term, and things like that. He may just be coming here at the right time for Steve Bisciotti and his business crew, which is to solidify why you need to hold on to your Ravens situation, whether it's PSLs, season tickets, or whatever they are. That's I think what you hope for as a marketing person, is that you have the organization in place and you're prepared and you're competent, but then you need something like this to occur on the field, because you see what's happened 35 miles away in Washington. It's gone so far south that it's a great dichotomy between what's happening here, and I'm sure that the Ravens are currently stealing market share, as we say in the business world, stealing share from the Ravens in those outer Montgomery, PG county markets, because people love a winner and they love somebody exciting, and Lamar is both of those right now.
How fascinating is this? You and I, being the old farts, remember when the Orioles were the only team here, the Redskins were the only team there, the Redskins were sold out and had a waiting list from here to Raleigh, and the Orioles had 3.6 million people in Cal Ripken and new bricks, right? And an all-star game and all of that. It's fascinating because those two brands have been kicked in the balls for 25 years. Like, literally, both of those brands have been kicked. And the Ravens have had to come in and work harder. The Nationals have had to come in and work harder. They've had to retain players and stink and draft Strasburg and give him money and lose Harper and all of the stuff that's happened. It's fascinating that the Baltimore Ravens, my father died in December of 92. If he came back and heard that the Baltimore Ravens and the Washington Nationals, were running these markets, and hockey too, to some degree, and Maryland can't give tickets away when there are 6 in the country. By the way, Marty, there were 8,000 to 10,000 empty seats at the Ravens game Sunday. There just were. I mean, I sit there, I watch it, I'm there. There were a ton of no-shows for a 7-2 football team and Deshaun Watson on a perfectly nice 45-degree football day.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, too, to keep in mind, and I have no doubt there's a part of it that people that purchase tickets don't show. But if you look now, in fact, in the upcoming stadium revisions, this is all you hear about, which is, number one, reducing the capacity of the stadium itself in terms of fixed seats. It's the last thing that somebody under the age of 35 wants. They don't necessarily want to come to the game like you do and sit in a particular seat and stay connected to it for 4 quarters or 9 innings.
When are you going to take me to millennial school so I can understand these children?
And so they want to be where they can be socially. They want to be together. So I would not doubt that about half of those seats that you saw unoccupied were actually purchased by people who chose to sit in a tent on the ground floor or were walking around in other places to do it, because the notion of them coming and sitting in a seat for, like I said, those length of time, that's just not what they're interested in. And so some of the legacy stadiums, and M&T Bank is a legacy stadium, Oriole Park is a legacy stadium. In their retrofits, I know they're trying to do a lot of things with entertainment, but they're also looking for those circulation places where people can stand and watch the game, stand with their friends, have their drinks like they're sitting at in downtown, Fells Point or wherever it is. That's the way that they want to experience the game. So sometimes I think looking at the Stadium Bowl can give you a little bit of a skew as to what's actually happening. But look, no doubt, it's still about getting people to buy in advance and make a commitment beyond one game. And so that's the challenge. So maybe the Ravens are seeing some people come in, but maybe perhaps they're also net losers still, because some people are just saying, I'm not changing my habits. I love Lamar, but I'll watch him on TV.
Marty Conway has Lamar fever and Nats fever and sports fever. He's teaching down at Georgetown University, of course, longtime executive with the Baltimore Orioles and the Texas Rangers in Major League Baseball. I'll get off the Lamar thing for a minute because, they're going to play. It's Monday Night Football. It's L.A. It's Hollywood. It's good. It's Thanksgiving week. We got the whole thing going on here. But baseball has crept back in, and this story's explosive, right, bro? I mean, I don't know what else there is to say. Black Soxy scandal when teams win, Pete Rose, collusion for you and me, wink, wink. We sort of know that's still going on. That's off the field stuff. But when you have a whole organization in on a cheat code and it goes on and on and on and on and you win championships, much like the President of the United States is finding out this week, when you try to do covert things, you better have everybody. Everybody better be as nefarious as you. Because once somebody gets out of the circle of trust and has evidence, and there's Marty, it took one day for fans to start putting up the video patterns of what was going on. Like, I don't know who's going to hang for this, and I don't know how it gets to Sig Mejdal or Mike Elias or where, but I have a feeling if they're doing a real investigation, like not the one they did on steroids 20 years ago where they didn't want to find the truth, right? Like, hey, Mueller, go in and tell us everything except where the needles, If they really want to find culprits, and this speaks to Goodell and Deflategate, right? And burning tapes of Belichick because what he did was so egregious and sticking, monkeys in trees with cameras. I don't know where this is, bro, but I was around baseball a lot. You were around it a whole lot. There's a lot of, chew spitting, nut grabbing, steal signs, throwing at guys' heads, unwritten rule, just all of that stuff. You can go watch the movie Major League and learn about Vagisil and, all sorts of stuff, right, that goes on with cheating. But this is another level, man. This is Belichickian, right? This is spy-ish, and I've never heard of such a thing because this stuff wasn't available to do 40 years ago.
Yeah, well, it goes to, and what Rob Manfred is most concerned about, I'm sure, is it goes to the integrity of the game, the outcome of the game. Of all the things that leadership in sports needs to protect, Adam Silver and all, it's the outcome of games in terms of, are they, you have to worry about Vegas and Atlantic City and other places like that. But
nobody wagers on WWF matches, right? Literally, right?
Right. Yeah.
Fair enough.
The issue here goes to that, and again, commissioners do not have subpoena power. We know that, but they do have ways of going about getting the truth. And I would suggest that if you look back at the last 2 or 3 years, I think 4, you had a pretty major scandal in Atlanta where they were signing players earlier, faking birth certificates, doing things like that. That general manager was banned from the game. There also was a circumstance between St. Louis and Houston when somebody went from one club to the other and was breaking into their scouting system after that. There were serious suspensions and dismissals there. This does not involve those two types of things, but I do think clearly that Rob Manfred, number one, he's going to have to ask everybody, and if you're not willing, if he asks you to come in and talk and you're not willing, I don't think that will be good for people. Like I said, he doesn't have subpoena power. He can't force you. But I do think it will cast a negative light. And the second part of that is, look, for 3 years or so, the Astros have made every effort to support the thesis that they're the smartest people in the game. They've written books. They've gotten hired in other cities. And it's always been written that they are just far, far ahead of other people. And if you look at this, you say, well, actually, maybe you're not, and maybe your version of Moneyball isn't legit. And so everything that, I think Astro Ball is going to need another 2 or 3 chapters, whoever that author is, to think about rewriting that, because you're going to have to start looking at every game, every series over the last 3 years. I suspect that Rob Manfred will come down pretty heavy on this to the point where either people will lose jobs and be out of baseball or have lengthy suspensions and, quite frankly, probably an expensive fine to the Houston Astros because they've had a number of issues here that have embarrassed baseball over the last 12 to 18 months.
Man, don't they have their hands full? I mean, seriously, enough with Oakland and Tampa and the Orioles and, where the Montreal, Portland, Charlotte stepped up. The guy from the Charlotte thing sent me a note and LinkedIn, wants to come on the show. And, they're trying to steal the Orioles through my radio show. I tried to tell him, I'm not here to help Peter, sell and his family sell you the baseball team, but people are sniffing around and the game's really struggling, in a lot of ways that we talk about all the time, from how to deal with the shift to the pitching changes to the length of the game to my dear friend getting hit between the eyes with a line drive by Mookie Betts out of Comiskey Park 2 years ago, and then there's just the fact that teams tank now, and the Orioles are going to lose another 100 games, and it's November, and I can tell you that. So there are some places where they're not picking up the pace, but the cheating thing, this is a whole another problem that's going to suck up a lot of the oxygen over the next couple of months for all the reasons you pointed out, which was they won a lot, and that really pisses people off when you cheat.
Yep.
And that really speaks to Belichick and the Patriots in
Right.
that, no one begrudges Tom Brady his greatness or Bill Belichick his genius, but they do begrudge you having monkeys in trees with cameras videotaping. That's something that's an otherworldly level that's made – really, I think a lot of Belichick, for me, a lot of it has been, what are they doing to cheat this year? Baseball better cut that off. Yeah, they better end that now.
Yeah, the relentless promotion of success generally raises lots of eyebrows because, look, Mike Fiers, who was the first one to really speak out on this publicly, he's sort of doing the Jim Bouton of our decade, right? He's speaking out of turn, so to speak. He's
not kayfabe, to bring another wrestling reference.
Yeah, he's sort of violating the player code, which is you generally don't talk about teams after you leave. You might share a few secrets in the dugout or things like that, but you generally don't speak out publicly about them. So I think that's another component of this is if Mike Fiers knows plenty of this, then there are plenty of other people that know it too, just not really talking about it. So look, the game is awash in money. It's a $10 to $12 billion industry today because of television revenues and corporate sponsor revenues, not because gate revenues. Those are trending down. But it's awash in money because of that. And so what Rob Manfred has to be the steward here, which is to continue to move the industry and the game forward, and don't let these things get in the way of celebrating, a World Series championship, a Mike Trout, someone else like that. But look, it's the off season, and so generally media tends to report on non-performance stories in the off season, and this will run for another 2-3 months, I'm sure, until they start playing in Florida and Arizona. This will still be the headline for baseball for months to come.
Jim Crane better hire some police around him from what I saw at the owners' meetings the other day. Marty Conway joining us here. He's out on LinkedIn. He's on Twitter. He's easy to find when he's not on a camel somewhere over in the Middle East. But 17 football games. And speaking of football in the Middle East, or playing football in Dubai, or playing football in Sydney, or I'm going to Tokyo next week to see U2 in Seoul, Korea. The NFL, this new thing, I'm not shocked by it. I don't think you're shocked by it. You've always quoted that big billions, Carl Sagan's numbers of 25 billion dollar industry. Goodell wants to get there. When I saw the leaks last week on this, I don't know, it all makes sense to me. And, if the Chargers and the Jaguars can make their way to Frankfurt and London and, I don't know. It feels to me like this thing's, they're going to go on the Wonkavator here, and the players are going to go along with it, and they're going to go along with it because they're going to be able to be paid to go along with it, right?
Yeah, I think, again, $25 billion by 2027 is the North Star for Roger Goodell and the current owners. And so, they've put up the bat symbol, so to speak, and that's what everybody is headed for. And if that means that, we have to do things bigger and better in Los Angeles, look, at the end of the day, DeMaurice Smith for the last year has been talking about the players are not interested in an extra game. 17 games is too much. We're worried about safety, et cetera. The trade, frankly, is safety for money. And if they can continue to get, more money towards the players' payrolls, and then number two, I think guaranteed money. To the extent that these contracts have run for 3 or 4 years and they're guaranteed each year versus large signing bonuses with the back end of the deal not being worth anything. I think that's what the players ultimately are interested in. And if that means trading a preseason game for a regular season game and maybe not really influencing the schedule, I do think the NFL in the next round will probably push the Super Bowl back to closer to mid-February as opposed to the first weekend in February. And I think all that becomes a very positive financial thing between their media companies who are paying them $9 to $10 billion a year right now and are prepared to pay them a whole lot more in the next round, another round of playoffs. So all of that's going to go into the mix to get towards this $25 billion number that Roger Goodell has basically put his stamp on, in terms of he's not leaving the game until he's achieved the ultimate goal, which that's what he stated a few years ago. So I have no doubt that's where they're headed.
So you're saying America will, and the world will, feel the love of a Valentine's Day Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's literally where we're heading.
I mean, I think at this point there's no reason for them not to be in the middle of February, given that other than the NBA All-Star Game and the Grammys, there's not a whole lot of other things, and those events could move or move around. But look, at the end of the day, football runs sports in terms of sports TV, and if the network executives and others agree that January and February is for playoff football and Super Bowl build-up and a Super Bowl game, then I think they'll be all for it. So I think that's where it comes down to, which is that's what the players will want. And for an extra $1 billion in player salaries spread out, I think DeMaurice Smith and the players will figure out how to divvy that up.
Marty, always appreciate our visits, man. We've been all over the place with this one, but it's been a busy time around here. Making my first trip to the L.A. Memorial Coliseum, all the Olympics, all the history, 100 years old, all of that good stuff. And then I get to go to Inglewood and we'll do the mall, for the rest of my life, right? But at least one trip on a Monday night, the sun will set over the Coliseum on a Monday night football game, and the Ravens will be a part of it. So, I'm a jaded old guy at this point. This is going to be kind of a fun trip this week, and having Lamar and Hollywood. This is these are the good times, right? I guess that was your point in the beginning. Like, if you're not having a good time with 8-2 and Lamar Jackson, what the hell are you waiting for?
Yeah, I think in 5 to 10 years, you're going to see the NFL have a major headquarters in L.A. New York will still be their league office, but in terms of their media center and all these other things, the new structure that's going up out there, and the two teams as anchor tenants, indicate that the NFL wants to have a major position on both coasts, and then potentially from there, London, Mexico City, who knows, wherever else, because these 48 contiguous states are not big enough to hold the NFL in the next 2 decades. So it'll be interesting in terms of what you find. And, hey, by the way, if you happen to find a San Diego, LA Chargers fan, take a picture. I don't think we've ever actually seen one. So,
oh man, it's unbelievable. I mean, I was at the game last year, and I'm going in this time. I was almost going to say to you, I mean, look, I was there the day the franchises were granted, and you and I were talking about it long before, and what becomes of Oakland. And by the way, I brought it up with JT the Brick this week. The Ravens play the Raiders in 21. So not next year, but the year after, we will play in Las Vegas. So the Ravens will get a game there. So there'll be a trip to Vegas and all that. But by 22 or 23, there could be a game in Rio, or a game in Frankfurt, or a game in Mexico City, or a game in, by the way, Honolulu, right? I mean, they're going to play 16 of those games. That's an exciting road trip proposition for kind of every Raven fan. And, the Notre Dame playing in Ireland and the way they've done the hockey games. This makes all the sense in the world. It made a lot of sense to me.
No, the 48 states is not big enough for what the NFL's plans are. So to the extent that they can have that media, as well as the occasional games in those other continents or other countries, for lack of a better term, that's what they're going to do. I think that's where they're headed for sure.
Marty, appreciate you. He's Marty Conway, out on LinkedIn, out on Twitter, and everywhere good sports business information is provided. He's also a professor, the good professor of sports business down at Georgetown University, where he's been threatening to make me a lecturer. By the way, my Masson lecture is still up on YouTube. It's up on my Facebook. You're going to hear it next week through the holiday. We got a lot of great stuff coming up after LA, a lot of great Baltimore positive stuff as well, including the new swag from Strategic Factory. Big appreciation to Keith and the whole team over there, Jeff and everybody there, Fawn, all of them. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault, headed out to LA, Turkey, pumpkin pie, Ravens in first place. These are the good times. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.